The wedding no one celebrated. The scorching sun hung low over the village of Izayama, casting long shadows on the cracked red earth. It was meant to be a joyous day. Drums echoed in the distance, women sang traditional songs, and the aroma of spicy goat meat stew wafted through the air. But despite the festive sounds, something was wrong. The people gathered for a wedding they neither supported nor believed in. Nikemdi, the bride, sat on a low stool inside her mother's hut, her face expressionless. Her hair was beautifully braided, beads adorning her neck and wrists, but her eyes held no joy. At only 19, she was being forced to marry a man the villagers whispered about. Why would Nikemdi marry Okena? One woman hissed to another just outside the hut. That boy has nothing but dust and dreams. Indeed, Okena was poor. He lived with his aging grandmother in a crumbling mud house near the edge of the forest. His clothes were often torn, his sandals patched more times than anyone could count. He didn't own a farm, nor did he trade at the market. Some said he was cursed, others said he was simply lazy. But what no one knew was that Nikemdi had chosen Okena. Or rather, she had no other choice. Her father, Chief Uzodima, had fallen from grace 2 years earlier after a scandal involving misused village funds. He had once been one of the wealthiest men in Izayama, respected and feared. But now, the family barely scraped by. When no suitor came with bride price, and gossip began to swirl, he made a quiet arrangement with Okena's grandmother. A goat, a bag of rice, and a promise. That was the bride price. Inside the hut, Mama Efe, Nikemdi's mother, adjusted the bride's wrapper with trembling hands. You must endure, my daughter. There is no shame in marrying a poor man, but there is shame in defiance. Nikemdi nodded, not trusting her voice. She remembered the way Okena had looked at her the first time they met, eyes filled with something deeper than desire. Something like a secret. The wedding ceremony began under the baobab tree in the village square. The elders sat on carved stools, and Okena stood nervously beside his grandmother, her bent back curved like a question mark. Nikemdi was led out, her footsteps slow, her gaze fixed ahead. As the libation was poured and the kola nuts broken, silence hung over the gathering. No laughter, no cheer. Even the village drunk, old Papa Nawok, seemed too sober for comfort. After the final blessing, Okena took Nikemdi's hand. It was warm, but he felt her reluctance through her trembling fingers. Thank you, he whispered. One day, you'll know why this had to happen. She looked at him then, truly looked, and saw the same glint in his eyes. A glint that didn't belong to a poor man with nothing to offer. They walked back to his grandmother's compound, hand in hand, the villagers watching them like a snake slithering across a path, curious but wary. That night, in the silence of their small mud house, Okena sat across from Nikemdi and spoke in a low voice. You think I'm just a poor man, don't you? She said nothing. He reached beneath the floor mat and pulled out a leather pouch. From it, he drew a pendant, golden, with an insignia unfamiliar to her. What is that? She asked. It's the truth, he said. And one day, it will shake this village to its roots. Nikemdi stared at him, confused and fearful. But she didn't ask more. Not yet. Outside, the wind blew gently, as if carrying whispers from the forest. And so began the union no one believed in, but one that would turn the village of Izayama upside down. Whispers in the wind. The morning after the wedding, the village of Izayama was quiet. Even the roosters crowed with less energy, as if mourning Nikemdi's fate. In the small compound where she now lived, the sound of pounding yam mixed with the occasional bleating of goats. Life had returned to its normal rhythm, at least on the surface. Inside the tiny hut, Nikemdi woke up early. The mat she shared with Okenna was stiff, and the room smelled faintly of herbs and smoke. Okenna was already outside, fetching water from the stream. She sat up slowly, her eyes drifting to the corner where he had placed the strange pendant the night before. Golden, with an insignia shaped like a lion standing on a hill, it didn't look like anything from their village. Nikemdi reached for it, then pulled her hand back, unsure if she even wanted to know more. But the words Okenna had spoken echoed in her mind. It's the truth. And one day, it will shake this village to its roots. Later that morning, while she swept the compound, Okenna returned carrying 2 calabashes of water. He was quiet, but there was something different in the way he moved, confident, deliberate. "Good morning," he said. "Morning," she replied, barely meeting his eyes. They worked side by side in silence until Nikemdi couldn't hold it in anymore. "That pendant," she began, "where is it from?" Okenna paused, then wiped sweat from his brow. "It belonged to my father. He died when I was a boy. But everyone says you were raised by your grandmother alone." He nodded. "Yes. Because after he died, no one wanted to speak his name. My mother vanished not long after. But he wasn't from this village, Nikemdi. He was from a powerful family far from here." She stared at him. "Then why are you poor?" "Because power means danger. And sometimes, it is safer to be poor and forgotten than rich and hunted." Before Nikemdi could respond, Mama Efe appeared at the gate of the compound, her face tight with worry. "Nikemdi," she called. "Come. Now." Nikemdi followed her mother through the village, people staring as they passed. When they reached their old compound, Chief Uzodima sat on a stool under the mango tree, his face pale and sweating. Several elders stood nearby, murmuring among themselves. "They say Okenna carries a cursed object," one of the elders said. "That he has been digging into forbidden places. Poor bride, poor groom." But the truth about him shook the whole village. The storm approaches. The next morning, the sky was unusually dark, as though the clouds had gathered to listen to the secrets of the earth. Nikemdi awoke with a sense of foreboding, an unease that she couldn't shake. Okenna had said he trusted her, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized how little she truly knew about him. She found him outside, standing near the small fire pit. His face was drawn and serious, his eyes scanning the horizon as if waiting for something, or someone. "We need to talk," she said softly, walking toward him. Okenna looked at her, his expression unreadable. "It's time, Nikemdi. You deserve to know the truth." She nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his words sink in. "Tell me everything." He sat down on a large stone, and Nikemdi joined him, her heart beating faster with each passing second. "My father wasn't just any prince," Okenna began, his voice low. "He was the last ruler of the Lion Throne, a kingdom that once spanned much of this region. But that power came at a price. The rulers of the Lion Throne were cursed. They could never remain in one place for too long, for fear of their enemies rising up against them. My father tried to escape that life, but it caught up with him." Nikemdi listened intently, her mind racing. This sounded like a fairy tale, a myth that mothers whispered to their children at bedtime. But there was a certainty in Okenna's voice, a truth that she couldn't ignore. "My mother, your grandmother, and I fled the kingdom when I was just a boy," Okenna continued. "But my father's enemies never gave up. They've been searching for me, for any trace of the Lion Throne's bloodline." Nikemdi's chest tightened as she realized the depth of what he was saying. "You're telling me," that your enemies are still after you. Okenna nodded. Yes. And that's why I married you. I needed to keep my identity hidden, to protect you from what's coming. But I can't do it alone, Nikemdi. The wind howled through the trees as if agreeing with his words. Nikemdi felt a chill run down her spine, and she couldn't help but glance over her shoulder, as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. I don't understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why hide this from me? I wanted to, Okenna said, his eyes filled with regret. But I couldn't risk anyone finding out. Not even you. I thought I could keep you safe by keeping you in the dark. But now it's too late. Before Nikemdi could respond, a loud shout broke the silence. Okenna! A voice called from the edge of the compound. They both turned to see an older man riding a black horse, his dark cloak billowing in the wind. The villagers stood at a distance, watching, whispers filling the air. Nikemdi could feel the tension rising, the dread settling in her stomach. The rider dismounted swiftly and approached them with a determined stride. His face was hardened, his eyes sharp with authority. He stopped in front of Okenna, his gaze piercing. So, it's true, the man said, his voice low but commanding. The bloodline lives. Nikemdi stood frozen, unsure whether to be frightened or curious. The man's presence alone seemed to fill the air with an undeniable heaviness. You came for me, Okenna said, standing to face the stranger. I knew this day would come. The man looked at Nikemdi, then back at Okenna. I didn't come for you, boy. I came for her. Nikemdi's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. The truth you're hiding, the man said, isn't just about you, Okenna. It's about her. The girl you married. She carries the key to a power greater than even the Lion Throne. The words hit Nikemdi like a thunderclap. She stumbled back, her breath coming in shallow gasps. What was this man talking about? What power? How could she, a poor village girl, hold any kind of power? Okenna stepped in front of her, his body tense. Stay back, Nikemdi, he warned. But it was too late. The rider's gaze was fixed on her, and she felt it like a weight on her chest. You are the last of the bloodline, Nikemdi, he said, his voice chilling. And your power is the only thing that can stop the war that is coming. Nikemdi could only stare at him, her mind reeling. She had thought her life was already set, that she would live a simple life with Okenna, in the shadows of the village. But now, the truth was unraveling before her eyes, and she had no idea where it would lead. The storm was coming, and there was no escaping it. The legacy unveiled. The rider's words hung heavy in the air like the calm before a storm. Nikemdi's mind raced, but her body remained frozen, as though the weight of his statement had paralyzed her. The last of the bloodline. What power could she possibly possess? She was nothing more than a poor village girl, married to a poor man who had no title, no wealth. Everything she knew about her world was suddenly unraveling. Okenna stepped in front of her, his arms outstretched protectively. What do you mean by that? He demanded, his voice low and filled with menace. The rider didn't flinch. He was a man accustomed to power, to the weight of his own words. You don't know it, Okenna, he said, his gaze shifting briefly to Nikemdi, but she carries the heart of the Lion Throne within her. The power was passed down through the generations, hidden away, waiting for the right time. Nikemdi felt a cold shiver run through her. She glanced at Okenna, who now stood with his hands clenched at his sides, his eyes dark with something she couldn't quite read, fear, regret, and something else. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice trembling as she stepped closer to Okenna, her heart pounding in her chest. The rider looked directly at her, his eyes unblinking. You have the blood of the ancient rulers in your veins. It was hidden from you, from all of us, until now. That pendant your husband carries is a marker, a sign that the throne can be reclaimed. But not by him, by you. Nikemdi blinked, her mind struggling to process his words. No, I'm just Nikemdi. I'm no one. You're more than that, the rider insisted. You are the last heir to the Lion Throne, the one who can unite the fractured tribes and end the war that has been brewing for decades. You are the key to restoring the kingdom. Okenna stepped forward again, his jaw tight. This is madness. She's a village girl. Nothing more. The rider's gaze hardened. That's where you're wrong, Okenna. The power has always been hidden within her, dormant until now. The time has come for that power to rise, and you both will have to decide whether to embrace it or run from it. Nikemdi felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. A whirlwind of thoughts, confusion, disbelief, fear, stormed through her. She was just a girl from a poor family, married to a man with nothing to his name. How could she possibly be the heir to a throne lost to time and war? Why now? Okenna asked, his voice raw with desperation. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Why did you wait until she was married? The rider's face softened, just for a moment. Because the time wasn't right. The kingdom was lost in blood and fire. The true heir had to remain hidden. But now, the kingdoms are beginning to fight for the throne. The bloodline must be protected, and the truth must be revealed. Nikemdi looked at Okenna, and the weight of everything began to settle in. This was no longer just about a poor marriage or the struggles of a village girl. This was about kingdoms, power, and war. What do we do now? Nikemdi whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. Okenna's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw the fear in them. He had always been so confident, so sure of himself, but now he seemed just as lost as she was. We need to go, the rider said abruptly. There's no more time to waste. The enemies of your family are already on their way, and you're not safe here. You'll never be safe here. Nikemdi felt a sudden rush of panic. Go where? What do you want from me? You must come with me, the rider said. We must take you to the hidden stronghold. Only there will you be safe. Only there will you learn the truth of your heritage, of your power. Okenna's voice cracked, his words strained. And if she refuses? The rider's expression didn't change. Then the war will find her. And it will not show mercy. Nikemdi's head spun. Her thoughts were a chaotic blur of fear, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The life she had known, the life she thought she understood, was slipping away from her. In its place, there was only the looming shadow of a throne she never asked for, power she didn't know how to wield, and enemies who would stop at nothing to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. She glanced at Okenna, his face now pale, his hands shaking. For the first time, she understood something about him that had always been hidden. He wasn't just a poor man from a forgotten village. He was the guardian of a truth so powerful that it could change everything. And now, she was part of it. I don't know what to do, Nikemdi whispered, her voice breaking. Okenna reached out to her, his hand trembling. We do this together. We have to, Nikemdi. The rider turned his horse and started to move away. Time is running out. You have to choose. Now. With a deep breath, Nikemdi took Okenna's hand. It felt heavy, as though their future had already been decided. Whether she liked it or not, there was no turning back. Let's go, she said softly. I don't know where we're going, but I know we can't stay here. And so, They left their home behind, the only life they had ever known, walking into an uncertain future, unaware of the dangers that lay ahead, or the power that stirred deep within Nikemdi's blood. The hidden stronghold. The journey was long and treacherous. The rider, whose name Nikemdi still didn't know, led them through dense forests and across rivers that seemed to stretch endlessly. The air was thick with tension, and the weight of Nikemdi's newfound truth hung over her like a storm cloud. Okenna, always the quiet protector, walked beside her, his grip on her hand firm but comforting. The silence between them had grown since the rider's revelation. It was as though neither of them knew what to say, or perhaps neither of them dared to speak the words that lingered in the air. What now? The rider was a man of few words, but his presence spoke volumes. His eyes were always scanning the horizon, his senses alert. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen too much, someone who had lived through countless battles. He never once looked back at them, as though he was leading them on a path he had already walked 1,000 times. By nightfall, they had reached a high ridge that overlooked a sprawling valley. The village, the place where Nikemdi had spent her entire life, seemed like a distant memory, a world away. Below them, hidden in the shadow of the mountains, was a massive stone fortress. "This is where we're going," the rider said, his voice cutting through the stillness. "The stronghold of the lion. It's where your ancestors once ruled. It's where you'll learn what you need to know." Nikemdi felt her stomach tighten. The stronghold looked ancient, its stone walls weathered by time and the elements. It was nothing like the simple village she had known. The fortress seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as though the earth itself was alive with its power. They descended into the valley, the air growing colder as they approached the gates. The rider spoke a few words in a language Nikemdi didn't understand, and the heavy gates creaked open, revealing a courtyard filled with soldiers. The sight of them sent a chill through Nikemdi's spine. They were all armed, their eyes watchful, their faces grim. This place was not the sanctuary she had imagined, it was a place of war. Once inside, they were led through a series of narrow corridors, each one lined with torches that flickered in the darkness. The walls were adorned with tapestries depicting lions, kings, and battles, symbols of power, strength, and a history that Nikemdi couldn't yet comprehend. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the fortress. The room was circular, with a stone pedestal in the center. The walls were etched with ancient runes, and the air hummed with an unseen force. On the pedestal lay a large book, its cover covered in dust, as though it had not been touched for centuries. "This," the writer said, "is the Book of the Lion Throne. It holds the history of your bloodline, Nikemdi. It contains everything you need to know about your heritage and the power that lies within you." Nikemdi stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of the book's history, the weight of her ancestors, pressing down on her. She reached out to touch it, but her hand hesitated just above the cover. "Are you sure you want to know everything?" the writer asked, his voice soft but serious. "Once you open this book, there's no going back. You will have to make a choice, whether to accept your legacy or let it go." Nikemdi turned to Okenna, who had remained silent throughout the journey. His face was hard, but his eyes softened when he looked at her. She could see the fear in his gaze, but also something else, a determination, a hope that she would choose wisely. "You've always told me we'd face things together," she said softly, her voice trembling. "But this feels like something I have to do alone." Okenna nodded. "Whatever you choose, I'll be by your side, Nikemdi. You're not alone. You never have been." With those words, Nikemdi felt the weight in her chest lighten, if only slightly. She turned back to the book and, with a deep breath, she lifted the cover. The moment her fingers brushed the pages, the room seemed to shift. A low hum filled the air, and for a brief second, Nikemdi felt as though she were falling into the pages themselves. Visions flashed before her eyes: battles, kings, queens, and the rise and fall of dynasties. She saw faces, some familiar, some strange, and she felt an overwhelming sense of power surge through her. But then, just as quickly, it was gone. The book was open, but the knowledge was no longer just in its pages. It was inside her. She staggered back, gasping for breath. The writer stepped forward, his eyes dark with something like regret. "You felt it, didn't you? The power of the Lion Throne. It's inside you now, Nikemdi. It's a part of you. But I don't want it," she whispered, her voice raw. "I didn't ask for this. I don't know how to wield it. I don't want to rule anything. I just want to live a simple life." The writer's face softened, but his eyes were filled with sorrow. "You don't have a choice. The throne doesn't choose the weak, and it doesn't wait for those who aren't ready. It will claim you, Nikemdi. Whether you accept it or not." Tears filled her eyes as the weight of her newfound responsibility pressed down on her chest. She wasn't just a village girl anymore. She was the heir to a throne, to a kingdom that had been lost to time. The burden of power. The following days in the stronghold were a blur of confusion, fear, and self-doubt. Nikemdi had hoped that the weight of the book's knowledge would fade, but it didn't. It lingered inside her, a constant hum in her mind, whispering secrets of her ancestors, of kingdoms that had crumbled and kings who had fallen. The power that had been hidden for so long now pulsed within her veins, a force that she could neither control nor escape. Okenna had stayed by her side, always watchful, always ready to protect her, but even he seemed unsure of what to do. They had learned little from the book itself. Its language was ancient, the symbols complex and cryptic. It seemed that only a true heir could unlock its full meaning, but Nikemdi wasn't sure she even wanted to. Every corner of the stronghold whispered of its past, of the grandeur it had once known. The walls, covered in intricate carvings of lions, spoke of royal bloodlines and battles that had shaped the course of history. And yet, the place felt empty, hollow, like a ghost of its former self. The power that had once filled it now seemed to hang in the air like a distant memory. One evening, after a long day of studying the book with the writer's guidance, Nikemdi sat alone in the courtyard, staring at the stars. She had grown tired of the fortress's cold stone walls, of the constant reminder that she was the last heir to a throne she never asked for. The wind was cool against her skin, and for the first time in days, she felt a sense of peace, if only for a moment. Okenna found her there, sitting in the dark, her face lit only by the faint glow of the torches. He sat beside her, not saying a word, just offering his silent presence. "I can't do this, Okenna," she said softly, her voice filled with exhaustion. "I never wanted this. I just wanted a simple life, with you. But now everything is different." He reached out and took her hand in his touch warm and grounding. "You don't have to do it alone, Nikemdi. Whatever comes next, we face it together. We've always faced everything together." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she turned to him. "But what if I can't do it? What if I can't be the ruler they want me to be? What if I fail?" "You won't fail," he said firmly. "I believe in you." But deep down, Nikemdi wasn't sure. The power inside her, the knowledge she had unlocked, felt foreign, like it didn't belong to her. She wasn't a ruler. She wasn't a queen. She was just Nikemdi, a girl who had grown up in a small village, married to a man who was no different from her. The next morning, the rider summoned them to the central chamber. He was already waiting for them, standing beside the pedestal where the Book of the Lion Throne still lay open, its pages glowing faintly in the dim light. His expression was grave, his voice colder than usual. "It's time," the rider said, his eyes fixed on Nikemdi. "You've learned enough. You know the truth now. The enemies of the Lion Throne are coming, and they will stop at nothing to take what's rightfully theirs." Nikemdi felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean? Who are these enemies?" "The enemies are not just people, Nikemdi," the rider explained. "They are forces, powers that have been waiting for the rightful heir to return. The throne was abandoned for too long, and in its absence, others have risen, claiming the land as their own. Some of them are kings and warlords. Others are factions within the kingdom, seeking to regain control. And some are supernatural forces that have always been tied to the throne." Nikemdi stared at him, her heart racing. "Supernatural forces?" The rider nodded. "Yes. The power of the Lion Throne is ancient, tied to the very earth itself. The kings of the past ruled with the aid of these forces, gifts that allowed them to see the future, communicate with spirits, and wield powers beyond human understanding. But those gifts are also a curse. They are what corrupted the kingdom, what caused it to fall." Okenna stepped forward, his expression darkening. "And you're telling her that she has to face all of that? That she has to fight these forces?" The rider's gaze shifted to Okenna, his eyes cold. "The truth is, Okenna, Nikemdi is the only one who can stop them. She is the last of the bloodline, the one with the power to control the forces of the throne, or to destroy them." Nikemdi felt the room spin. "I don't want to destroy anything. I don't want to control anything. I just want to go home." "But you can't," the rider said softly. "The power within you is too strong. It will consume you if you don't learn to wield it. And if you don't act, the world you know will be lost." Okenna turned to Nikemdi, his face filled with concern. "We have to make a choice, Nikemdi. The kingdom, the people, they all need you. The world is at the brink of war, and you are the key to stopping it."